What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we are a full 24, maybe 30 hours in to Brandon Aiyuk watch. Things are getting hot and heavy, and it is totally brushing over all of the other news surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers, which this week there is plenty of and some big topics of conversation. But the only thing that we can focus on, that the whole world seemingly could focus on right now, is whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to land Brandon Aiyuk. And let me tell you, my friend, it seems like it's going to happen. Now, I'll say that my sources were not as optimistic as everybody else seems to be 24 hours ago. Today, I've gotten less as the day has gotten on. I got a little update this morning, but really that update was just simply, no, there is not a trade in place. Please do not say that there is a trade in place. Since then, it's negotiations are continuing, conversations are continuing. That is where we are. But everybody else believes that the optimism is very, very strong. So that being said, I'm going to ask you, you're back home. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. Whenever you said we're in 24 to 30 hours of Aiyuk watch, I told you before the podcast, it feels like we're in day 127 of Brandon Aiyuk watch. I mean, we've been talking about this. I looked earlier today. There was a story you wrote back in April that I was reading through this morning, just kind of going back through the saga that we've experienced here. I hope it's close to the end simply because I want a resolution. This is like the longest cliffhanger in the history of cliffhangers. So I want a resolution. I'm feeling good. The sun is shining. It was not shining when I was driving back down 70 this morning. So I'm glad the weather has come around, and maybe there is light at the end of this Aiyuk tunnel.
Maybe there is some light at the end of the Aiyuk tunnel. I'll say this, that I at this point, this is some of the most exhausting times, and we're going to dive into it. Like, we obviously have to talk about what's happening and all the reports and what we can trust and what you can't trust and where everything needs to. Our Cruz has a phenomenal comment there, and we have to do that at some point. But that being said, where we are and what we can believe and so on and so forth. But just like speaking personally and where we stand, and just my job as a journalist, this is the most exciting times for me. Like, I wake my wife up all night long because my alarm's going off every 2 hours just in case. I answer every single phone call that comes my way. It doesn't matter. You could call me from Alaska. I'm answering the phone, man. Like, and I'm running out of the room if I'm in the middle of a conversation to make sure that I answer phone. This is what you go to school for. This is what you do it for. This is when it's the best. And where it goes from here, that's the bigger question. That's the question everybody concerns themselves with. Obviously, you have the overly optimistic reports coming out here from people. I'm not going to name names. I'm only going to name the names of the reports that we're going to talk positively about. You have the overly optimistic reports saying that a deal is done and that this is already in place and Brandon Aiyuk is a Pittsburgh Steeler and everything, so on and so forth. And then those reports also claim, hey, well, it'll happen by the end of the week. My sources are telling me that the conversations continue, that negotiations are still happening, but currently there is no solidified deal in place. That being said, the reports from Alan Saunders of Pittsburgh Sports Now saying that there is quote-unquote optimism that the Steelers believe they have the framework of a deal in place that is eventually going to land them Brandon Aiyuk, I believe is correct. And from what I have heard recently, because not so recently, or I guess, I don't know, 24 hours ago compared to right now, the world has seemingly lit itself on fire. We have gone 6 lifetimes and we have arrived here. 24 hours ago, my sources were not as confident that Brandon Aiyuk was coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today, there's probably some optimism and things could feel a little bit better than where we stand much closer than they were, again, 24 hours ago. We'll dive into where that stands and also what's going to happen with the trade package, because there seems to be some clarity on where the trade package is and what's going to be handed to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let me ask you this question. When do you expect this to go down? Because I have an idea in my head, but I think we're all just kind of sitting around waiting. When do you expect this to happen?
it feels more and more like the San Francisco 49ers want this to be over. Like they want there to be a resolution, just as all of us do. So I feel like with that in mind, that because of the fact that there is still some details to iron out, there is still some stubbornness on both sides, both the Steelers and the 49ers, and I imagine on the Brown side of things as well. I think it probably isn't going to happen. You know, if I had to put an estimation on it, I'd say at some point this week, but I'm not confident in anything in the meantime because, as everybody is saying, the situation is fluid and it can turn on its head in 2 seconds. I mean, look at yesterday. Steelers were out. Steelers were back in within minutes of each other from conflicting reports. So, again, the situation is very fluid, so I'm not going to give you a direct timetable, but it does feel like the 49ers are itching to get this over with. So I feel like it has to happen here in the next, by the end of this week, probably at some point before next week begins.
Yeah, I got a feeling that if it doesn't happen tonight, which I don't think it does happen tonight, I would give it another 3 hours. Like 7:00 would be my deadline tonight. And this is a complete guess. This is nothing but a guess. 7:00 would be my deadline tonight. If it doesn't happen by 7, maybe 8:00. We'll go 8:00 tonight. If it doesn't happen by 8:00 tonight, I could see tomorrow at some point, either like early in the afternoon, right? Maybe mid-morning, somewhere around there. That would be my guess. If it doesn't happen before tomorrow night, I'm looking at Friday during the game. Like I'm during the preseason game, the trade gets announced, because that's classic when general managers, like, they got nothing to do. The game's going on. They don't have decisions to make. They're going to talk to each other. Cool. That's what's going to happen. I could see a trade going down then. I think it is going to happen relatively soon. When, who knows? I don't think it's as close to the finish line as some people are making it say or seem, but at the same time, I think it's close enough to start believing that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Now, there's the other part of this, which is the compensation. And over the last day, we have learned that James Daniels is most likely in the talk for being sent to San Francisco or being traded for Brandon Aiyuk. And on top of that, they fleeced him and didn't give a first-round pick. And if that's what we're looking at right now, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to give up James Daniels, a second-round pick, and maybe I've seen rumors of a 5th. I've seen rumors of a 4th. If that's what you're giving up for Brandon Aiyuk, Omar Khan deserves a statue, my friend. Put him in the middle of Pittsburgh. I don't care what you got to take down. That is unbelievable what he could possibly pull off. James Daniels, a second, maybe a little bit more. Who knows? But we'll go James Daniels in a second. I've heard Calvin Austin's name out there, but I think that would be more of a just get them over the hump, get them over the finish line, add it to the package instead of a guy that they feel they could work with and negotiate. Like James Daniels could bump you from a first to a second. Calvin Austin isn't getting you anywhere close to that. So I think Calvin Austin would be more of a, hey, let's just add this in to get this over with, to finish this off. James Daniels, a second, and I don't know, let's say a later round pick, a mid-round pick. How are you feeling about that? That, in my eyes, that's unbelievable. That is a trade that should not happen, but very likely will.
It sounds like Omar's cooking. It sounds like Omar Khan.
Yeah, it does.
That's completely, because it sounds like a deal that he was going to say, this is what we're offering you. And if you want to go somewhere else, go ahead and go somewhere else. Because the one thing we've seen from Omar Khan in 90% of any move he's made, free agency, trade, any of that stuff, it's patience. He's been patient with this Aiyuk thing. I said it at the beginning of the show. This is day 189 or whatever it ends up being of the Brandon Aiyuk stuff. We were back at the draft talking about, hey, were they talking about it at the draft? Would they have potentially given up that first round pick for Brandon Aiyuk at the draft? Were the 49ers open to it back then? It's a lot about patience, because we're getting up to the beginning of the season. San Francisco, as I mentioned, feels like they want to get this over with. And at that point, again, knowing that Aiyuk likely has Pittsburgh as a preferred destination, and it all comes down to who he's going to sign an extension with, it allows Omar Khan to be patient and say, this is what we're giving you, take it or leave it. And the fact is, Omar Khan seems willing to walk away from the negotiating table at any point. And I think that is driving everybody else crazy, because they can't pull one over on him.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Look, I think Omar wants this deal to get done. I believe that he feels that Brandon Aiyuk is the missing piece to this Steelers team and can get them over the edge and makes them a real Super Bowl contender and so on and so forth. I also think that he sees the vision of maybe Justin Fields turns into the guy, and now you got George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, Pat Freiermuth, a young offensive line, and see AB be sneaking in there, man. Every time Antonio Brown tweets nowadays, I'm like, maybe he's got something. A young offensive line, you could bring back Jaylen Warren. Your defense is stout. I just think it works. Like, I think he sees the vision. He wants to get this done. To be able to do that would be unbelievable. And just like you said, like I've heard from very like reliable sources that they offered a first-round pick during the NFL draft, and they were very content with a first-round pick. Now that's not the case. And if that is what happens, that's just crazy. And I'm okay with giving up James Daniels. I'm so okay with that. Move Nate Herbig over to guard. Let Zach Frazier start at center. I mean, Mike Tomlin pretty much said that Zach Frazier is going to start at center today anyways. So if you move Nate Herbig over, you start Zach Frazier. I'm all for it. I think that works out totally fine. Mason McCormick hopefully develops into something great, and then you can move on from Nate in a year. When it comes to the Brandon Aiyuk trade or signing, I saw rumors out there of like 4 years, $115 million. I don't know. I don't believe random Twitter accounts that I've never heard of until all of this started happening. So until, something comes out, I don't know if I believe that. I also have a hard time believing that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to hand Brandon Aiyuk a 4-year deal instead of a 3-year deal. I think a 3-year deal is usually how they keep it. I could see $28 to $30 million a year. That's where we're sitting. I think it's a great move. What it does to shake up the depth chart is very simple. Aiyuk and George Pickens, Van Jefferson comes off the bench as the number 3. Calvin Austin is in the slot, and then Roman Wilson. I'm all about. I mean, think about how right now, where we currently stand before this trade is done, your starting wide receiver core your Steelers wide receiver core is George Pickens, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson. Yuck. George Pickens, Brandon Aiyuk, Van Jefferson off the bench with Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson in the middle. Phenomenal. Like all you did was add one name and you just went, wow, every piece seems to fit a whole lot better. It's, I think it works out so well. Now, when will it happen? Who knows? It's a wait and see type of situation. And for everybody who's looking for the clock to strike midnight right now, you might actually have to wait until midnight. Let me ask you, what's the worst case scenario in this entire situation? And then we'll dive into everything else because there's a lot of questions in here about Brandon Aiyuk. We'll answer those and then we'll talk Justin Fields. But what is the worst situation you could see happening with this entire thing playing out?
For the Steelers, the worst case scenario would be the Browns reduce their offer because they're getting angry that the fact that it's taken this long. And Brandon Aiyuk just simply says, all right, you know what? At the end of the day, Browns were a playoff team last year. Maybe Deshaun will be better. And they're offering more money. Money plus a similar trade compensation than the Steelers were trying to offer, and he ends up going to the Browns. That is the worst case scenario for the Steelers because at the end of the day, they were there, but Aiyuk at the end of the day just ended up wanting to go because there was more money and everything else was equal.
Yeah. So maybe it's the dome, man. Maybe the dome gets him over the edge. He's just like, well, I get to play inside now, so it's not cool. Because if anybody's been to Cleveland, which I'd imagine a lot of people on this that are listening have, if you've been to a Cleveland Browns game, it sucks, man. Like it is, the wind coming in there is unreal. I don't understand why they thought that was cool. It's not. So a dome maybe gets it over the edge. I agree. I think that if Aiyuk somehow ends up in Cleveland, that's the worst case scenario. But I think that's so far from a possibility right now. Like I just don't. I get that there are multiple teams engaged. This comes down to Brandon Aiyuk, man. It has nothing to do with the San Francisco 49ers. Ayuk's either going to play it out with San Francisco or he's going to go to the team that he wants to go to, and that's not Cleveland. It's not New England. That's why they backed out. It's looking like it's Pittsburgh. All right, let's answer questions so we could dive a little bit more into this. What do we got so far on the Aiyuk front?
Let's go to Cody Roberts, who says, how much do you think we're going to pay him per year and for how long if he signs? Love the show.
Appreciate you as always. I think that it's a 3-year deal. If I had to guess, it's $29 million a year. Like I think maybe 29.5. If I had to guess, Omar Khan's going to get it right below 30 to the point where for Aiyuk, it's 30. Like he's comfortable with 30, but Omar Khan could look like a legend and the base number or something is 29.5. It's going to come with probably not a whole ton of guaranteed money. It's going to come with a lot of guaranteed money. I could see what TJ Watt got $80 million guaranteed or something like that. I could see $80 million guaranteed, maybe 75. It's going to look good in the Steelers' favor, and then they're just going to keep continuing to work it out over the next 3 years to make sure that Aiyuk gets more money up front and doesn't have to worry about these things. So I think it's going to, on paper, be somewhere around $29 million a year if I had to guess 3 years.
Let's go over to the next question here that says, what quarterback will be the best fit if we do end up getting Brandon Aiyuk? Because Justin Fields has built an undeniable chemistry with George Pickens.
Yeah, he has. And I think Russ would build that chemistry too. But I don't know what the best quarterback situation is. To be honest, I think both of them would be totally fine. I think Justin Fields would be a good option for him. I think Russell Wilson would be a good option for him. If it's Justin, the best part of that is only that if Justin does win the quarterback competition, there's a lot of thought that he's the starting quarterback next year, and therefore you're building that chemistry, you're building that relationship. But I think either one of them would be fine.
Let's go over to Dalton's, who says, if Calvin Austin is in the package for Brandon Aiyuk, does that mean that Cordero Patterson is for sure making the Steelers roster?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll toss out another name. I think Scotty Miller makes it too, if that's the case. I think that's how that would work, just because you'd want another slot guy. And Brandon Aiyuk could play the slot, but you'd want another slot guy. Maybe Quez Watkins, but Quez Watkins hasn't been impressive. But yes, I would think that Patterson definitely makes the roster if that's the case, because you're going to need a kick returner.
Let's go to Victor's question that is, in reality, do you think the 49ers could have played this any better? What are your thoughts on how they've dealt with this to this point?
They could have negotiated with them for the last 2.5 months. That would have probably helped the situation. I don't know. Like, to be honest, they dug themselves a hole. You know, the best, in my opinion, if I'm the 49ers, I would have traded Deebo Samuel during the NFL draft and signed Brandon Aiyuk. That's what I would have done. He's a better wide receiver. He's younger. I believe that would have been the route I would have taken, but that's not how they went about it. Besides that, I like when it comes to the whole negotiation thing and the 49ers not handing him a deal or offering him a deal that's worth it. In my eyes, they can't afford it. Like, they got people to pay, and they're already paying a lot of people. And I would have paid all of those people, but I would have traded Deebo Samuel and paid Brandon Aiyuk instead.
We got a couple people in the chat here asking about a deadline. King Chief says, when's the deadline? And then we got another one down here I wanted to highlight. Wilson says, if I take a nap, would Aiyuk be here by the time I wake up?
Wilson, if I had to guess, probably that's typically how it happens. Or if better if I take it, I'll do you guys a favor. I'll go take a nap, and by the time I wake up, I guarantee you guys Brandon Aiyuk is on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I would imagine it's about 4 minutes after I go to sleep. So that would be my guess. When is I don't think there is a deadline. I don't believe that there is a deadline. I think right now it's going to happen, and it's going to happen sometime soon. It's going to happen this week. Like, it is. Things are too hot right now, and the 49ers seem too eager to make it happen right now that, like, there is no, it's going to happen next week or the week after that. It's probably going to happen by the end of this week, but I don't have a hard deadline because I don't think there is one.
Malcolm wants to know, have we seen a favorite target for Russ or Justin Fields? And if you get Aiyuk, does that change what we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, the favorite target has been George Pickens. Obviously, he deserves to be the favorite target, but I believe it does. Like, Brandon Aiyuk is one of the best wide receivers in football. He is so underrated. If you go, like, sit down and really study this guy, he's nuts, man. He could do everything. So, yeah, I think he becomes the favorite, but I don't think it's by much. Like, the Steelers have 2,000-yard receivers, could catch 10-plus touchdowns, plus Pat Fryermuth's going to be a monster. I think he's the favorite, but I wouldn't say by a large margin.
Let's go to Levi's question here. That is, how would we be able to afford Brandon Aiyuk, George Pickens, Russell Fields, Najee Jalen, and Pat Fryermuth?
You don't. So Pickens is 2 years away from a contract, and you don't make that decision for another 2 years. Like, people are guessing that you pay George Pickens, that's got to be your guy. He's going to take up a massive contract. The Steelers could care less about that contract right now. They will think about it in 2 years. They will figure it out in 2 years. 2 years is a long way away from where they are right now. Russ and Fields, the only way that either of them come back next season is on a very cheap deal. so you don't have to worry about those. Najee's not coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers after the season. I have a very hard time believing that changes. Jalen, you could tender, and he is going to be super cheap, like $1 million, maybe $2 million max, depending on the tender that you give him. And Pat Fryermuth's going to get paid, and he's probably going to take up like $13 million a year, maybe $14 million a year. And I would imagine that comes soon. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, but I would guess that he gets paid. But you could afford Aiyuk and Pat Fryermuth and then figure out the rest. And that's a very okay place to be in the NFL.
Let's go to Black and Yellow Texas Steel, who says, do you think Aiyuk gives George Pickens a boost or messes with his mental negativity?
I think there's a very good possibility that George Pickens does not take having a better wide receiver on the roster well. But that's just my experience with George Pickens. I hope that it goes positively. I'm always going to root pro player, and I hope that works out for the best of them. I hope it allows George Pickens to not have so many double teams and to work better and be more open. I hope that's what comes, but I don't know. We'll see.
Let's go down to, as I scroll through, trying to make sure I don't hit any opposite ones. Let's go to 4-1 Tour, who says, why do the Steelers fans all want Brandon Aiyuk so bad? So we pay him $30 million a year for an offense who wants to be run heavy. Aiyuk is a system wideout. Pickens can go anywhere in the league and play. Do you agree with 4-1 Tours?
No, not at all, man. Not even a little bit. Brandon Aiyuk is one of, if not the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL. A system, I don't know who told you that one time, and that's why you hung on to that one, but no chance. That is the farthest thing from true, my friends. That's like saying Christian McCaffrey's a system running back and Deebo Samuel is a system wide receiver in San Francisco. No, they're very good. Is the Kyle Shanahan offense phenomenal? Yeah, it might be the best in football, but Brandon Aiyuk is a top wide receiver anywhere he goes, not just San Francisco. So yeah, I'm paying him $30 million. I'm not even thinking about it, to be honest with you. I'm okay with that. The Steelers have the cap space. Make it happen.
Let's go to Colin's question here. He wants to know, do you feel the 49ers are now interested in moving Aiyuk because of tackle Trent Williams holding out? And are they going to have to pay Trent Williams?
Yeah, I think that's what pushed it over the edge. I don't think that they thought Trent Williams was going to be an issue. He is an issue now. Now they realize they can't pay everybody. You're obviously paying your left tackle over your wide receiver. So that's what pushed it over the edge. But I've also heard that Brandon Aiyuk is kind of pissed off the 49ers in the last couple of weeks, that he's done some stuff that messed with them a little bit. And to be totally honest, if I was making FaceTime Twitter videos of the stuff that Brandon Aiyuk was making FaceTime Twitter videos of and saying all the stuff that he was saying on podcasts, I would imagine my boss wouldn't be too happy with me either. So I've heard that it's a little bit of both, but Trent Williams definitely pushed it over the edge.
Let's go to Big Maeve, who says, do we give them Broderick if they want him over Dan Moore Jr.?
No, it's the same reason that you don't pay Brandon Aiyuk over Trent Williams. You don't trade your future franchise left tackle for a wide receiver. And even if Brandon Aiyuk is better than Broderick Jones right now, which he is, you don't do it, because at the end of the day, your left tackle in this NFL is going to always, at all times, be more valuable than your top wide receiver. Your left tackle will win you Super Bowls. Your wide receiver might get you there, but if your left tackle sucks, nobody's throwing him the football. So you keep your left tackle.
Matt B wants to know, speaking of different players that could be in this theoretical trade, any chance George Pickens is included?
No, I don't even think there'd be conversations of it. I think a couple weeks ago we were having fun with that conversation, and I think it made sense, but from what I've heard, no.
And let's finish off the IU questions before we circle back to questions later in the show with Rod Youngs saying, if we sign Brandon Aiyuk, how high are the Steelers' ceiling?
Oh, it's Super Bowl. Like it's AFC champs, potentially. It's AFC North title, certainly. And I think you're a Super Bowl contender. I'm saying that that's a guarantee? No chance. No chance I'm saying that's a guarantee. But you have taken incredible steps forward this offseason, and to have a guy like Brandon Aiyuk next to George Pickens, next to Pat Fryermuth in an Arthur Smith offense, like, it should work. It should work really, really well. So you've put all the pieces together. and the Pittsburgh Steelers are the Pittsburgh Steelers. At the end of the day, that gives them a little bit of an advantage. I think I would go Super Bowl. I don't want to say Super Bowl or bust because you got to go through Patrick Mahomes, but I would say Super Bowl is the ceiling for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's move on and we'll bounce back to questions a little bit later. I'll try to get a bunch of them collected.
Yeah. So keep tossing your Brandon Aiyuk questions out there. We'll answer them after we talk about Justin Fields, certainly. The next thing that we want to address real quick before we dive into all the questions and so on and so forth is that Justin Fields gets to start on Friday against the Houston Texans, which we all saw coming, but now that it's official, it's worth talking about. At the same time, in the same press conference, Mike Tomlin said that Russell Wilson is still in pole position, and he made it very clear by saying that the depth chart was released and we could stick to it. But I don't know. I think this is a big opportunity for Justin Fields to put himself on the map and to say, hey, this is not just practice. This is not just me developing on the field in practice against the second team. This is me being able to do this against a very good Houston Texans defense that he will get an opportunity to do so in front of for, I would say, a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, depending on how many series the offense gets in that amount of time. Do you look at this as big of an opportunity as I do? Because I think that this could be not the moment that puts him over the edge, but the moment that puts this into real conversation, because I think, and Mike Tomlin said, he's still giving us a bunch of BS trying to say, this is a competition, but it's not. I think this is an opportunity for Justin to make this a real competition.
The one thing that Mike Tomlin said on countless times this morning that, you can say what you want about Tomlin's press conferences. A lot of the time he's feeding BS and he's having fun doing it. But the one thing that he repeated was the results in stadium in the preseason carry heavier weight than what you see on the practice field. And if Justin Fields, with what, let's be honest, is going to be limited reps on Friday, goes out there and impresses, it's going to help his case. Is he going to be able to win the job simply by balling out in these 3 preseason games and then going back and kind of reverting to being just even with Russell Wilson during practice weeks? No, he's going to have to outperform to get that week 1 starting job. But the better he does in this preseason, specifically in these preseason games, the more he's going to close that gap. And that is a huge thing for not just week 1. That is a huge thing for going forward. If there is any fall off from Russell Wilson early in the season, it goes into how long is that cord going to be before they pull him and throw in Justin Fields because of how well he did in the preseason. So I think it's important not just for week 1, but going forward.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. This is above anything an opportunity for the Steelers to really say, well, this is who Justin Fields is. And we get to look at who Justin Fields is, and they can make every decision that they want for the rest of the preseason and into the regular season, and it's fine. But for the first time, they will get an actual understanding of, in a game, this is what Justin Fields can do. And I agree with you like that. It allows them to really have, because right now we're all guessing. We're all guessing. We see what he could do in practice when nobody could tackle him. We see what he could do after a week of looking like crap, and then coming back the next week and looking better, and coming back the next week and looking better. But everybody's got to stop tweeting news that isn't Brandon Aiyuk news, because we all looked at our phone when Adam Schefter tweeted out that Deion Kane is going to the Jets. Nobody cares, Adam. Nobody cares.
I'm a little excited about that.
Nobody cares, man. Nobody cares. But I agree with you. I think this is the first opportunity. I expect big things from Justin Fields. I mean, worst case, he stinks and whatever, you move on and Russ is your guy and we can all stop talking about it. Best case, he looks super good and this becomes a real quarterback competition again. And I hope it is, because to be honest, I'm starting to really like Justin, man. And I'm starting to really like the potential that he brings. We'll see on Friday, but I do think this is a big moment for Justin Fields and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and really the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Because look, if nothing works out now and he looks good in the preseason, you saw him, you saw what he could do. Let's see what he could do next year as a starting quarterback. I think it works. I'm all about it. I think it's a big day. With that said, there are really only 2 topics of conversation to be had at all surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. Let's go back to some questions. What do we got?
Yeah, we got plenty of questions surrounding the Aiyuk saga, the Justin Fields, and everything in between. So let's start with Arik Cruz, who says, Noah, you need to rock, paper, scissors, Nick, for the beard, or take turns. He looks odd. I listen, the only reason I have a beard is because I'm lazy whenever I don't want to shave. So if I look
Did
odd,
you have a beard yesterday?
No, I shaved last weekend. So
okay. I know. I just
good.
Yeah. I just wait till we both have mustaches.
It's coming.
It's coming.
There have been discussions. It's a fluid. Discussions are fluid with the mustache.
You guys have to convince my wife. That's the biggest turning point here. Is you guys have to convince to get over the hump of the Brandon Aiyuk trade. The Steelers might have to give up Calvin Austin to get over the hump of the mustache. You guys might have to tell my wife that I need a mustache. So that's where we're at.
All right, let's get back to Steelers-centric questions, starting with Vibin with the Dogs, who says, if it's right guard, is it Herbig or McCormick, who Tomlin spoke very highly of?
I believe it's Herbig to start the season. That would be my guess. McCormick still has some development, and he's looked good, but I would guess Nate Herbig's the guy. Nate Herbig looks fine. Like, he's a starter in my head. They feel confident in him as a starter. I believe that Nate Herbig would be the guy who gets the first shot there, probably starts week 1 because it's a quick turnaround. And McCormick, who has taken a couple of first-team reps, has also, played a majority of the second team and third team while Spencer Anderson played the first team when Isaac wasn't out there. So I would guess Nate Herbig is the guy they feel most comfortable with.
Let's go to David's question. That is, how is Roman Wilson's ankle doing?
I mean, he's taking steps forward. Like, he's out of the boot. I haven't seen him run or anything, but I would imagine that's the first step in the process. Ankle injuries are really tough to come back from, but I would say he's looking better than he did.
Let's move over to Big Mabe that says, I'd rather have Van over Calvin in a trade. Thoughts?
No, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. I'd rather trade Van Jefferson than Calvin Austin, definitely. But
I think he'd rather have Van
I'd rather trade Van over Calvin. I think everybody would agree on that one, but I don't think the 49ers would. There's a reason that we would all agree on that one, because that would be the better option. But the 49ers, they're not thinking the same way. They want the better guy. That's Calvin Austin.
Troy wants to know, why wasn't someone like Courtland Sutton looked at, or was he?
I heard that he was. I heard that the Steelers called the Denver Broncos and they tried to make offers for him, but the Broncos shut it all down. Now that he got paid by Denver, he's not going to go anywhere. But I from what I heard during the NFL draft, the Steelers were in pursuit of Courtland Sutton.
Let's go to Nicholas's question. He wants to know, if the Steelers do include James Daniels in a trade, could they look to sign a new guard in free agency or scoop one up after another round of training camp cuts?
Yeah, you might be able to do that, but I trust the guys that they have in-house. That's the one luxury of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense right now, is that they have a really deep offensive line. Mason McCormick's going to look good. Spencer Anderson is reliable. Zach Frazier can start at center. Nate Herbig could start at guard. You got Isaac Seumalo. You got Troy Fautanu. If you don't trade Dan Moore, you got Dan Moore. You got Dylan Cook, who could play a couple of positions. I think the luxury of the Steelers offense right now is their offensive line and how deep it is. So I don't think you have to go do that.
Let's go to Joe Dilly's question, who says, hey guys, heard a couple of players went down at practice. Anything as a fan to be worried about right now?
Deshaun Elliott would be the only guy that I'm worried about. Darius Rush went down, but he came back at some point. Elliott got carted off, and not carted off the field, but carted off to the locker room, which is not we should stop saying that. And I should stop saying that, because it's a giant hill. If you hurt your leg or your ankle or your foot or anything, and the Steelers say, let's walk up there, they're idiots. So we shouldn't do that. But Deshaun Elliott would be the one that I'm looking at. I know there are reports out there from someone that's saying that he came back. There are a lot of other reports saying he didn't, including one from myself. So he would be the only name that I monitor. I don't think it's that serious, but it's something to watch.
Let's go to 412er, who says, why won't we put Fautanu at guard? He believes he's too small to play tackle.
Everybody thinks he's too small to play tackle, but the Steelers have no intentions of playing him at guard. He's going to play tackle.
Let's go to Colin Cruz's question, who says, do you feel the 49ers? We already had that.
Colin, man, I love that. Oh, I thought this was two questions. I thought he kept calling them the 48ers. I was going to say, no. Colin, that's hilarious, man. I'm loving it.
That's the same one, but we had to skip through. Let's go to Marks, who said, will Danny Smith finally be held accountable for poor special teams performance if he can't adjust to these new kickoff rules?
I have never in my life heard of a Danny Smith hater. So you are the first. You were the first, which there are times where Danny Smith has definitely needed to be held accountable. The last couple of years, man, not him. Like I I don't know what you've been watching, but they have one of the best special teams units out there because Miles Killebrew's unbelievable. Mark Robinson's pretty good. This year, I'm hoping Jack Colletto's pretty good. Cordero Patterson, like they got the guys. They might not be taking anything back for a touchdown, but you go look at the rest of the special teams outside of Presley Harvin, who was not Danny Smith's decision. They look pretty good, man. They look pretty good. And Danny Smith, just to kind of support Danny Smith a little bit, because I'm a big Danny Smith guy. Presley Harvin and now Cameron Johnston have never held a snap for a kick in their life before coming to Pittsburgh. It was almost effortless for both of them to transition into it. That's all because of Danny Smith. The guy's got a system. So got to give credit where credit's due.
And he's an electric factory to watch during practice.
Yeah, dude, he's a man. Danny Smith's a man. So, look, I get it, but I don't think it's as justified anymore.
Let's go to Steven's question, who says, with the first, obviously, depth chart coming out yesterday, do you agree fully with the depth chart? And if you were to switch 3 player positions, what would they be? If there are 3, I should say.
That's a good question. I don't know if I have 3. I think I would have listed Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as the co-starters just because, I believe it should be a better competition than it is. I would have put Jonathan Ward as the running back 3 with Cordero Patterson instead of LaMichael Pirine. But to be totally honest with you, I would have went LaMichael Pirine and Jonathan Ward as the running back 3 and Cordero Patterson as the running back 4. And then Jack Colletto being our fullback 2, man. What are we doing? Connor Hayward took 3 snaps at fullback all preseason or all training camp. Jack Colletto should be fullback 1. That would be my mistakes.
Spider wants to know any movement with Cam Hayward's contract situation.
No, which is surprising. You thought this was going to happen at the beginning of training camp. He hinted at it. Omar hinted at it. You thought it was done. I still believe it's very close. They're just kind of fine-tuning some stuff. I would imagine the Brandon Aiyuk contract and the situation that they're in is playing a role into this. Same with Pat Freiermuth's, but I still believe both of them get done.
Let's go to OS's question, which is, without bias, who is better, the Steelers or the Browns? Hello from Germany.
I'll tell you this, that I try to be unbiased, and being a journalist, I grew up a Steelers fan, but the more you cover a team and get into this, you have to become unbiased. Like, I can't root for this team anymore, unfortunately. Okay. According to Mike Florio, there we go. The Steelers will be the last team standing in the Brandon Aiyuk sweepstakes.
Yeah,
that's a joke. But I'm going Steelers, man. I mean, you pay a quarterback $1 billion who isn't very good. The Browns be the Browns, my friend. The Browns be the Browns. Brandon Aiyuk. Ask Brandon Aiyuk who's better. He'll let you know. And appreciate you tuning in from Germany.
Let's go to Copy's question. That is, do you think paying Aiyuk $30 million will affect us trying to give players contract extensions or not?
I don't. I really don't. I mean, it obviously affects the quarterback situation a year from now, but I have a hard time believing that anybody's getting a massive deal at the quarterback position for the Steelers in the next 2 years. Maybe in 2 years, and that's going to be tough. It's going to be really, really tough. But I don't believe that right now it affects almost anything. It in my head, it just makes sense. Like, right now is the time to do it. And you got to hope that Justin Fields or Russell Wilson's cool with the team-friendly deal in a year from now. Or you're going to go with a draft.
Let's go to Malcolm's question. He wants to know, who are some players or groups to watch in Friday's game against the Texans?
So inside linebackers, Peyton Wilson will be a blast to watch. But also I want to see how much Mark Robinson plays and how good he looks. The corners, obviously. First look at Dante Jackson and Joey Porter Jr. against a really, really, really good defense, our offense in Houston, who's going to play their starters, Beanie Bishop included, because he'll be on Stephon Diggs, which is going to be awesome. On offense, the wide receivers, no doubt the wide receivers, especially working with Justin Fields. That's an easy one as well. The running backs would be cool. And then guys like Darnell Washington, guys like Jack Colletto, guys like Michael Pruitt. How do those guys play? That would be those kind of sleepers on the roster. That would be my pick as well.
Let's go to Samuel's question here that says, Noah, on this podcast, you talked Justin Fields into coming to the Steelers. Are you trying to do the same with Brandon Aiyuk? I would love it, but not selling the farm for a possession wide receiver.
That's okay. A postseason wide receiver. Let me correct you on one. First off,
either way.
Yeah, no, I first off, I appreciate it. Because because I did. Justin Fields, we spoke that right into the universe, and we are doing the same with Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think he's a postseason wide receiver, man. Like, I just think Brandon Aiyuk is so good, is so underrated and so good. If you go look at everything he does, there are very minimal reps that he is just not one of the best players on the field every single time, if not the best. And you have Christian McCaffrey, so that's really hard to do. But I think he's so good, man. I think he's so good, and he makes this team so much better.
Let's go over to Yeet's question. Yeet wants to know, do we see a point in time this year when Corey Trice earns a starting spot?
I think it's too early to tell. In the words of Mike Tomlin, we'll see. To be seen. To be determined. What does he say? I don't know. He says one of those two. I think it's, we got some work with Corey Trice. He's got to get more involved. He's got to work his way back from injury still. When he's a full go, we'll see what happens. But I think that's open. I think that's a possibility for sure in the slot, depending on where Beanie is and how good he is once the season starts. And also, where's Cam by week 8? There's a lot of questions, but I could see that the door is definitely cracked for sure.
Yeah, we did see some elevated opportunity for him yesterday in dime package. So maybe that leads to something too.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, if that's where he's going to start, that's a good one. That's a good place to be.
Let's go to Matthew's question here. It is, we know for sure that Aiyuk is a star individual player, but do you believe he can make the players around him better rather than taking away their targets and potential?
So Aiyuk had some issues in the Super Bowl. Like when he didn't get any targets, he complained, that's worrisome, my friend. It's definitely worrisome. But at the same time, Deebo Samuel is an excellent wide receiver. Juwan Jennings is an excellent wide receiver. That offense was very much so star heavy, and everybody kind of excelled in it. So I have a feeling that it could be the same way here. That being said, like, I understand the question. I really do. But it's on Arthur Smith to get these guys involved. It's on the quarterback to get these guys involved, because wide receivers just run routes that they're told and get open. That's their job. But when it comes to the rest of it, there might not be a better blocking wide receiver in the NFL than Brandon Aiyuk. So if that's the point, or if that's a point of emphasis, yeah, I think he's going to improve Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren a ton.
Matt B has a question here saying, do you guys want Russ or Fields at the helm? Simply on want, not on belief.
I kind of want Fields, man. I'm kind of turning into a Fields believer here. I think he just looks good. There's a lot of issues. Like, he is the slowest processing quarterback outside of Kenny Pickett that I have ever seen. And him and Kenny are neck and neck in how slow they process the field. But I just think the upside's there. And I think he's a blast to watch. So I think I'm Team Fields, but I'm not pushing it. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from Russ. I think Russ is the favorable option and the safer one.
Let's go to Teddy's question. That is, can I get an update on Ryan Watts? Has he had playing time and has he looked good? Haven't heard anything about him as of late.
Yeah, he's playing with the third team. He's not getting many reps outside of that. I would say he's on the outside looking into the roster right now, but that could change come the preseason, and that's when it's going to be decided, is during these games. But right now, no, he's not a guy that's been overly impressive. That being said, he's a 7th round or 6th round rookie. Like, he shouldn't be viewed as a guy who's going to come in here and just kill it right off the jump. You're kind of hoping that he shows some development, and I think that he's got the intangibles, or the tangibles, I should say, to do so.
Brent wants to know, how is Cole Holcomb? Seems like everybody's mind is on the middle linebacker.
Yeah, as of right now, my expectation is Cole Holcomb does not play this season. That's all we got. I haven't seen him once at training camp. I don't know what's going on with him. Restructuring his contract in my head signaled bad, but we'll see.
Let's go to DJ Thomas, who says, have a question here. Does the Steelers start Wilson just because him and Tomlin are the only ones with a ring at this point? Don't think anyone left on the Steelers roster has one outside of those two. Got to go with the experience. Do you think ring chasing and having rings already plays a factor into this quarterback competition?
I think if you ask Mike Tomlin, that's exactly why Russell Wilson is in pole position, because Russ has been here and he's done it and he's won a Super Bowl. And to Mike Tomlin, that's what matters. So, yeah, I do. I think that you're spot on there. I think that he is the favorite because of that.
Let's go over to another Nicholas question here who says, what has Connor Hayward done to warrant a roster spot? He has 35 receptions for 318 yards in 2 years. I'm more excited about other tight ends and Jack Coletto than anything Connor has done.
Look, I've been trying really hard to like hold back on the Connor Hayward shouldn't make the roster thing. And I don't want Connor to like understand that I don't think he should make the roster, because I think Connor's a good dude and I think he's valuable to a certain extent, but I'm keeping Jack Coletto and I'm keeping Michael Pruitt over Connor Hayward. And I'm not even thinking about it because they are much more valuable than Connor Hayward. And they do things that you need instead of just being a guy. So Connor Hayward's got a lot of potential and he plays well on special teams and he's a reliable set of hands. He's a very reliable set of hands. Like that should not be downplayed. He's got phenomenal hands, but he's just not athletic enough to, warrant getting some of these guys off the roster so that he can make it.
Let's go to Dogman's question that says, Noah, if the Steelers get Aiyuk, who do we basically guarantee won't get a contract extension with that move?
I think it's the same guarantees, and I'll give you guys an update right now because good old Jerry Dulac, and Jerry always knows something. Actually, a little bit of an update here. Pretty good update. The Steelers have no verbal agreement in place with the 49ers for Brandon Aiyuk and are not in the process of hammering out final details per sources. And if you know anything about Jerry Dulac, those sources are damn good. That being said, and any potential deal would not involve the Steelers giving up a player. That one's big. That one's very big. That means James Daniels is off the table, Calvin Austin's off the table, so on and so forth. I mean, we'll see what happens. Maybe you got to shake up the deal later, but that's a good one. All right, what was that question again? I apologize.
I accidentally moved that one off, but I believe it was if you sign Aiyuk, who does that guarantee
who doesn't
get a contract extension?
I think it's the same people who didn't get a contract extension before. Najee is the top of that list. He's not going to get signed. I think that's the only one, to be honest. I think Cam gets a contract extension. Pat Freiermuth gets a contract extension. The quarterbacks maybe, but I think Jaylen Warren you bring back in a tender, and the rest of them are easy. Like you got to decide on Fields and Russ, but I don't know. That's a year down the road. That those aren't even conversations to have yet. But Najee would be the guy that doesn't get re-signed, but he's not going to get re-signed anyways.
Let's go to Malcolm's question next. He says the Steelers always score while I'm in the bath. Should I go right now until we land Aiyuk?
If you're feeling it, my friend. If you are feeling it, I would go right now and see what happens, because it'd be a great time to happen on the show. So that would be cool.
Let's go to Clayton Young's question here. That is, how is what we are saying about the quarterbacks different this year than how we talked about Kenny last year?
There's a guy named Russell Wilson who isn't Kenny Pickett. And the difference is, and I get your question. It's a very good question. The difference is that a year ago it was Kenny Pickett or bust. This year it's Justin Fields, who has a ton more upside than Kenny Pickett does because he's so much more athletic, and worst case scenario is just a super athletic quarterback, which you could do stuff with. And he's got a rocket of an arm. He's just slow at processing the field. And some of his throws are a little wobbly, but they're working on it. With Russ, I mean, the only reason that Russ wouldn't start for the Pittsburgh Steelers is because Justin Fields looks like he's got more potential than what Russ has right now. And that's a lot, because I just look at it. Sorry, I'm reading all the comments. I just look at it and I say that Russ is the more reliable guy and an easy starter and is going to win you games and is going to have a good stat line. Justin just might be the dude that takes you a little bit further and has like superstar potential. Not that Russ isn't a superstar, but superstar potential. That's the difference. Kenny Pickett didn't have that type of potential, and he was the only option.
Let's go to another question from Yeet that is, has Cordero Patterson been utilized at all in camp? Feel like I haven't heard anything mentioned on him.
No, he actually hasn't practiced. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, I believe. He's on the PUP list, or he's on the non-football injury list. Until he gets cleared from that and passes a physical, he will not be on the field. But he's been like slowly warming up. Like he's doing some running off on the side of the field, but no, he hasn't done anything at all.
Let's go to Steelers 21, who wants to know, do you think mobility with Justin Fields or decision-making with Russ is more important for an offensive line that may start slow this season?
No, the offensive line isn't going to start slow at all. They're going to be monsters. The offensive line is the least thing I'm worried about on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, they're going to be so good. It's crazy how good they look. But I think that decision-making is the option that you're going with. So, like, that's the difference, is if Russ has to, or Justin has to prove that his decision-making is equal to Russ's and his upside is better. That's how he beats out Russ. But decision-making is the hands down the most important component.
Mark wants to know, do you think Khan is leveraging income taxes in California versus PA with regards to contract, aka getting him lower than 30 per because the tax rate is lower in PA than it is in California?
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Pittsburgh's been named the most affordable city in the U.S. multiple times. So, or on the East Coast multiple times. So, and San Francisco has never been close. So, maybe. I don't think so, but I still think the deal is like just under 30 million.
C. Watts wants to know, would you draft Carson Beck out of Georgia if given the opportunity?
Without question. I don't care. Justin Fields would have to win the MVP this season for me to not resign. Like, Carson Beck is my guy. Like, that is the one. He's going to be a monster this year in college football. He's got the team around him. I think he's the number one pick in the draft next year. That guy's a monster. Yeah, easy. The best thing he could have did is sit in college. But what sucks is that I wish he came out, because I think the Steelers would have actually considered him. And man, that would have been a steal. Especially if they had Russ and could sit him for a year.
Let's go to Doug's question next, who says, who is less likely to wear black and gold next season, Cam Hayward or Najee Harris?
Najee Harris. Without question, Najee Harris. Najee Harris is not going to end up in Pittsburgh next year. It's just not going to happen. Doesn't work out. Either he prices himself out of the Steelers or he stinks and the Steelers don't want him back. It's a lose-lose for Najee Harris. Well, it's a win. He's going to go win because he's going to get the bag, and I'm always pro bag. Go get your money. You're only in the NFL for a short amount of time. Go get paid. But for the Steelers, they're not getting him. He's not staying in Pittsburgh after the season.
Richard Hunt has a lot of AST praise, but at the end of the day, if Aiyuk comes to Pittsburgh, wants to know which receiver then gets snubbed out of a spot.
Oh, that's a good question. Quez Watkins would be my guy right now. I think he's like bottom. Like, if I had to name the wide receivers before, we'll go pre-Brandon Aiyuk trade, is George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Quez Watkins. That would be my 5, most likely. And then if Aiyuk comes, you just scratch Quez Watkins, and I'm very okay with that. Like, I'm totally okay with that.
Let's go over to Moises's question. He wants to know, who's impressed you more so far this training camp, the offense or the defense?
Oh, that's a good. I don't know. Who impressed you more yesterday?
Yesterday, to me, it was the offense, especially in 7 shots. I mean, we all know that one with Shampklin was really close, but at the end of the day,
that was
running
not
the ball
touchdown
with Aaron Shampklin. I mean, I don't know what Arthur Smith paid off the line judges there, but hey, if he can do that in practice, maybe, once we get to the regular season. But no, I think the offense, mainly because of what I was watching, I think the offense impressed me a little bit more yesterday, but also I don't think Patrick Queen took very many reps. I think he was on a kind of veterans lower snap count. I think a lot of the star defensive players were kind of taking it a little bit easier, whereas the offense, it feels like, was clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Just because the defense is just so overpowering, like, they're just so dominant that the offense should not be good. And they've had days where they look pretty good. So I'm going to go offense as well.
Let's go over to Travis's next question, who says, looking at all the star free agents, do you see Steelers grabbing anybody else? I think bringing Pat Pete back for leadership would be great.
I don't think Pat Pete is on the mind of the Pittsburgh Steelers unless Darius Rush just stinks and they don't have a backup. That would be really the only case that I see that happening, is if they just really just can't find anybody. Like, if their corners are really bad before the season, they could sign a guy like Pat P, but right now I don't see that happening. And to be honest, there's just not a hole outside of wide receiver that I feel you have to go sign an inside or a player. Maybe inside linebacker, maybe, but again, that's like right before the season.
Let's go over to Charlie Mack, who wants to know, Fields is a turnover machine in the fourth. Do you think he's cleaned that up so far during training camp?
I mean, we'll wait and see, right? We'll wait and see if that's how that happened or if that improved at all during training camp. Mike Tomlin confirmed that he's been working on some mechanic stuff, but it's all just processing the field, and it's been processing the field. So we'll see. That's a wait and see. I don't know, to be honest. I don't know.
Let's go to Lifted Ones, who wants to know, how intense is this Steelers training camp right now? I feel like our players are going to be more sore leading into the season.
No, the Steelers training camp, I will tell you the biggest reason that they will not be as exhausted this time as next time, as past times, because the morning, if you go to practice on a Friday, practice is at 10:30 in the morning and it finishes around 1 o'clock, just before 1 o'clock. If you go on a Saturday, walkthrough is in the morning, practice is at 1:55 until 4. And the heat difference between 10:30 in the morning and 1:55 in the afternoon is unreal, my friend. Unreal. It is 1:55 in the morning literally feels like you're going to, or in the afternoon literally feels like you're going to die. So I think that would be a reason that they're not as sore, but it's intense, man. Steelers training camp practices are always intense. That's what I love about this team, is that they're one of the few teams that still tackle to the ground in practice. Patrick Queen said it himself. Justin Fields said it himself. This is the hardest training camp they've ever been through. I think you need that sometimes, man. I think you need it.
Yeah, I loved when, I believe it was Brooke Pryor of ESPN asked Mike Tomlin this morning about Justin Fields saying it was hard. He said, good. That's what we want.
Exactly.
Let's go to Savo's question, which is, showing love from Scranton, PA.
Hey.
Do you think we see Roman Wilson this season?
Hey, shout out. I appreciate the love. Hope back home's doing well. I think Roman Wilson's back by week 1, week 2, depending on the ankle injury. Sprains are tough. It's really hard to determine what the actual ETA is. But I would imagine week 1 is a fair shot. Maybe week 2, he's going to need a ramp up period. That's important to acknowledge here, is once he is back and cleared, he's going to need some ramp up time to get back into the offense. And then the Steelers are going to do what they always do, and they're going to slow roll him back into a game plan, and then eventually he'll be in the mix. But it's going to take some time, but I think, yes, and early in the season, I would imagine.
Let's go to Lucas McGee, who says, I mean, what are the chances right now with Brandon? You said 70% last week.
Look at, man.
Where are we at this point with everything that's happened over the last 24 hours?
70% feels a very good number, my friends. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do this. It is the second week of August, and I didn't stick to my guns on Monday, and I went with the doubt. I let the negativity get to me, and I said, no, you know what? I think it's going to happen in 2 weeks. I should have kept it the same. I'm not going to do that with the 70%. I'm still feeling strong. 70%. I think I'm sticking with the 70, and it's getting bigger, but I'm not going to say that yet. 70%.
Let's go to Daniel Foster, who just has a quick question about training camp. Is 7 shots, which we alluded to earlier, 7-on-7?
No, so it's goal line drills, full team goal line drills, full contact. If their pads are on, you get 7 shots to get into the end zone. So that's essentially what it is. And the offense and the defense compete. And what's cool actually is the winner, whether it's the offense or the defense. Most times it goes 3 downs or 3 opportunities with the starters, 3 opportunities with the backups, and then if they're tied, the starters come back in. But the winner, which today was the offense, I think they went 5-2, gets lobster, while the loser gets normal dinner. So it's a fun little challenge.
Let's go to Matt B's question. It is, who is starting more games this season, Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson?
If I had to guess, Roman Wilson. I just think eventually Roman Wilson just becomes that guy. They're going to have a lot of stock in him. So I would guess Roman Wilson. I'm not going to say the upside's bigger. I'm not going to say that he's better. I'm just going to say that the stock in a 3rd round wide receiver is going to be higher. But that being said, you get Brandon Aiyuk, a lot of things change, but I'm still going to go with Roman Wilson.
Let's go to Stephen Cornfield, who wants to know, people say Tomlin was handed a team by Bill Cowher, and that's why he succeeded so far. If they do great this year with this new team, do you think the credit would go to him, Omar, or Arthur Smith?
If I thought the first question was, would it go to Bill Cowher? And I was like, if this is still going to Bill Cowher, unbelievable. It's got to be. Look, Mike Tomlin deserves credit always. And in the NFL, You always hate your offensive coordinator. That is just a rule of thumb. I don't understand why, but there is no offensive coordinator in football that any fan base likes by the end of a season. So it won't be Arthur Smith. I think Omar is going to get a huge chunk of the praise, and he deserves a huge chunk of the praise. He has completely changed the vibe and the mindset of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I would go that I would go Tomlin and Omar.
Let's go to Doug's question. That is, let's say that Justin Fields takes quarterback 1 status. How do you see Russell Wilson handling that fact?
I mean, I think he'd be fine with it. I think it would be tough to swallow. Obviously, he's a guy who's never had to deal with that situation. Like, he got benched last year, but it was just a very strange circumstance. I think it would be tough to swallow, but I do think he'd be a professional. Like, there's no part of me that worries that Russ is going to cause issues. I think he'd be a great leader and a mentor behind Justin Fields, but I also think it would be tough to swallow because of what his resume is and what he has done in this league.
Let's go to Donovan's question, who wants to know, how are the new kickoff rules looking? Do you think it's going to be beneficial to the season?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. The preseason opener, the Hall of Fame game, showed me nothing, nothing, and I was so excited for it. Showed me nothing. So I'm hoping, I'm hoping that it is. I hope that it adds to it, but we'll see. It's still a work in progress, or work in progress.
Let's close it out with Joe Dilly's question here. That is, if the Steelers don't or can't sign Cam Hayward, who do you think will replace him or step up? Will we see another DT next season?
If they don't sign him, they will replace him. But I also think Keanu Benton would bounce over to the side. And then I would imagine that that's like, depending on the quarterback situation, it would go quarterback if they didn't re-sign a quarterback, and then defensive line would be number 2 on their like list of needs. Boom, boom. That would be it. So I would say it'd probably be a rookie that makes its way in there, or they bump Keanu Benton over. But Larry Ogunjobi's also going to be gone in a year, so I don't know. It's tough. You're going to need some defensive linemen. I would imagine a rookie makes his way in there, depending on what happens with Cam. But I expect Cam to be here.
That's a wrap for today's questions then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are going to head out of here. And as I say that, most likely a trade happens. But I said that yesterday, and we're still going. So hopefully tomorrow we got more to talk about. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as always, please find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.